Hi, I'm James from Chaosium. I sat down with Dustin Wright, who is Chaosium's distributor, retail, and customer support specialist, as well as a member of the Cult of Chaos team. Dustin is also the longest running employee at Chaosium, and as such, he has a bunch of really interesting stories. So I'm going to jump across to this interview with him in just a moment, but first, please remember to subscribe, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, aloha. I'm Dustin Wright. I work for Chaosium Incorporated. I handle their customer service, distributor sales and support, convention support. I'm part of the Cult of Chaos team, and all around groovy old guy.
So I think one really cool thing is that you have been at Chaosium for quite a while. You are the longest running employee at the company, right?
It's true. I've been working for Chaosium for 27 years now. Yeah, 27 years now, which is pretty amazing. I was hired by Greg and Charlie in the late 90s. Back in those days, I was sort of a keen young square guy who did lots of stuff they didn't want to have to do, um, logistics and shipping and price support and all sorts of stuff like that. My job in a nutshell was to do a bunch of the boring administrative stuff so that the hippies could do what the hippies were doing, which was writing and publishing amazing games for amazing people. So I was kind of the square back then. These days, in modern day, I'm probably the closest thing to a hippie in the company, which I find delightful.
So it's really cool to talk to you because you have all of this fantastic history that you can share, but I also want to talk a little bit about your role. Can you give us some insight into your job on a day-to-day perspective? What does it look like?
It's a lot of email and a lot of phone calls, mostly email. Um, as the I'm the customer service team for Chaosium, which means if anyone's got questions about orders or upcoming releases or anything like that, if they're contacting customer service at chaosium.com, and please do, I enjoy your emails. I'm answering those emails. I'm answering those emails all day. And you could just imagine the various questions that come in through there. But a lot of them are PDF related. A lot of them are when is my order going to arrive related. Um, and that's probably the bulk of my day-to-day work is on the customer service end. I'm also the point of contact for North American conventions. Generally looking for price support. I ship price support to conventions all the time and have been doing for decades. So, I mean, there's a fair bit of that throughout the week, depending on the time of year. I mean, at this time of year, there's not a whole lot going on convention wise right now. Things sort of gear down in the fall here in North America for the most part. But the other big thing I do is I kind of live 5 to 6 months in the future in a lot of ways because I'm talking to distributors and retailers about books we're going to be releasing 5 to 6 months from now. I am often the start of hey, we need to start talking about this for new books within the company. Like just today, for example, we're recording this in late September. I'm shaking the tree within the company for information on what we're planning to release in February of next year because I have to tell our distributors what we're doing in February next week. So happy Groundhog Day.
One thing I think is really interesting is that your job from the outside could kind of be in any industry. You use the term square work, and I think any job is really interesting once you get into the weeds of it. I'm interested in what the unique aspects of your job are, considering that it is something that could have different shapes. What is unique about having your job inside the TTRPG industry?
The coolest thing I get to do, and this is going to sound new agey wonky, but I get to make people happy. I really do. I get a lot of my time is spent introducing people to things that they might not have been aware of before, particularly at conventions. If I'm in a convention booth, that's where I shine. I just absolutely best part of my job is going to conventions or running a convention stand. Because you get to introduce people to our games for the first time, and it's happening all the time. And your every interaction with people in the gaming space and the non-gaming space for that matter, we're ambassadors to our hobby. And Greg and Charlie just instilled in me that we're part of the entertainment business. We may as well be entertaining. And I just sort of took that and ran with it. So I love making people laugh. I love making people feel at ease. And just welcoming them into our space, welcoming them into the Chaosium tribe. The kindness and treat people with respect, and you end up surrounding yourself with people that in my case I've known for 27 years or more. And I guess I don't know if that answers your question or not, but yeah, that's where for me it's all about people, and always has been. This job and working for Chaosium especially has always been about the people for me. There are other people who are better at writing rules than I am. There are other people who are better at creating game worlds and coming up with cool dice mechanics and stuff like that. But for me, the game industry is people, and gamers are awesome. Gamers are a lot of fun.
So, how has your work changed over the last 27 years?
I have worn a lot of hats over the decades for Chaosium. When I first started working for Chaosium, I was brought in specifically to create a little fanzine and a club for Chaosium players. The fanzine was called Starry Wisdom, and the club was called the Cult of Chaos. And it was a volunteer organization intended originally to teach people to play the Mythos card game and to run demo events and tournaments of the Mythos card game all over the planet at game shops and conventions and stuff like that. So initially, I was doing that, and I was part of the sales and marketing team. So I was doing a lot of retailer support because we had a big budget and were able to send retailers free product and posters and postcards and all that sort of stuff. So I was the keeper of all that information. I was the distributor support person back then as well. So I was doing the same thing I'm doing now. There were more distributors back then. And I was doing a lot of advertising. I was doing a lot of print ads. So back then, and long ago, there was a fair few gaming magazines, and that's where we did the majority of our advertising at. Because the internet was around in the 90s, but there wasn't a whole lot going on there. I mean, we had a website, but you couldn't buy anything specifically on it, and not everyone had access to the internet. And when they did, as often as not, it was through something like AOL or some third party barrier between us and the actual user. So we did a lot of print advertising in card game magazines, retail magazines, and I would ask the graphics department to design ads, and I would work with salesmen, actual salesmen, trying to fast talk us into running ads in their magazines so that they would give us review space or cover our games at all. And back then, if you weren't running print ads in those magazines, you didn't get any space in the magazines. And the card game business we spent a lot of money. We spent a lot of money on promotions and advertising. And I'm glad I don't have to do that anymore, because I like talking people face to face rather than trying to convince them that their life will be better if they spend some money. That's just me. Greg and Charlie rubbed off on me.
I spent a while thinking about what the perfect question might be to ask about the history of Chaosium, and then I realized if I knew it, it's kind of not going to be the perfect question because you're going to have all these really unique insights. So I want to ask you, what's something you want to say about the history of Chaosium? What's something that's changed, something that you've observed? What's a detail you can share with us?
it's still about the people. There's more customers these days than there ever was before, but it still comes down to creating great games that people actually want to play rather than just collect and put on their shelf, and expose to their friends and their colleagues and their families and get other people to play with them. Um, we're very fortunate in that our hobby our hobby gives people a safe haven and a harbor, and a stress relief from a world that is increasingly crazy. Um, we provide moments of awe and fantasy and make believe and ease, suckle, um, and that's still, I think, the most important thing we do is we allow people to escape for a little while and do things they could never do, be people they could never be. Um, the gaming meme. Gaming allows you to do things you can never do in real life, such as you wake up refreshed and ready for the day. Um, we get to do that, and it's for me. It's still about the people. It's still about introducing new people to our games. There's just a lot more of them than there used to be, and email makes it a lot easier to talk to them than it used to be. We don't have to print physical catalogs and ship them across the world anymore. Um, People can find our games if you're online, and almost everyone can get online these days. They can find our games. If nothing else, they could find them on our website. But there are any number of game shops out there that are selling our games online, so our stuff's easier to find ever. Um, but it's still the game shop. It's still the individual enthusiastic game master who's willing to run games for people who have never played it before. It's still the individual store owner or store employee who's willing to put a product on a shelf that doesn't necessarily sell as fast as the D&D player's handbook. They put our games on the shelf, and it's a leap of faith for them, right? To put our games on the shelf rather than just investing more money in Pokemon or Disney cards or whatever the new hot thing is that quarter. But once it's on the game store shelf, new people can find it. People who would never think to look for our website wander in with maybe even with a friend or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a friend for the first time in a game shop, looking around, and there's a RuneQuest starter set, or there's the Pendragon starter set, or there's the Call of Cthulhu starter set. And for the first time, they get a hint of what it is we do. And those starter sets are awesome. So hopefully we hook them.
So one last thing to end on, you talked about those moments of really great fun that people have with Chaosium games. I'd like to ask you about some of your moments of really great fun over the time that you've been working at Chaosium. Projects that you put through, or just gaming experiences, or just fun details in general. Can you share any of those with us?
There's three things that immediately leap to mind, and in no particular order. Um, Finally getting to see the H.P. Lovecraft's The Call of Cthulhu for beginning readers show up and be a physical, actual item for the first time. Because this was a book that I fell in love with when it was just some pieces of art on DeviantArt. And I contacted the artist and I chased him down and I said, "Hey, I love this stuff. Would you let us publish it?" And he said yes. I got to do a contract with him. I got to bring that book into the fold. And then over the next several years, just do everything I could to keep that project alive. And it took so long. But we finally did. We finally did print it and released it. And it's still one of my favorite things we've ever done now. In part because I shepherded into the company, and I coddled it, I nurtured it, and now it's out there in the world, and I love that. It's a bit of a victory for me. Playing RuneQuest with Greg Stafford, I mean, I got to do that. I mean, how many people get to do that? I got to do that, and that was pretty neat. And then I first started. Initially, before I was working for Chaosium, I was running games at conventions for that, but I was volunteering at their convention booth and almost running their convention booth long before I actually started working for the company. One of the things I was often involved with was the Cthulhu Masters tournament, which is a big Call of Cthulhu tournament at Gen Con, which would be played down in some locker rooms beneath the arena in Milwaukee. And the year we released Beyond the Mountains of Madness, I wasn't part of the crew. I was working the booth. I was actually working for Chaosium then. But the whole event, of course, takes place in Antarctica. So the Cthulhu Masters staff have everyone wearing these big heavy gloves while they're playing the game. And every time they took those gloves off to roll dice or to write something on their character sheet or something like that, they hit them for 1 to 2 points of frostbite damage. And people could not stop talking about that moment, that one little moment at Gen Con. Years later, people still come up to me and talk about that. And even though I wasn't there in person when it was happening, it's something I'm darn proud of. You know, we're lucky to have very talented people willing to come and run our games for us, and they do a great job. And I've tried to take care of them all these years, and yeah, they're good people.